So this is AS Economics guest paper for June 2025 exam series, and I'm going to explain you question number 3 part A. Explain whether PPC of a country is more likely to shift inward or outward during the period of war. Right, so you can define first of all what PPC is as assessment objective 1, that is knowledge. So production possibility curve is a graph which shows different combinations of two products that can be produced with the given amount of resources. For analysis part, you can make simple PPC diagram as well like this. So this is the PPC diagram, and on X we have X good and on Y we have Y good. This is Y good, and this is production possibility curve AB. So total boundary of resources is OAB. You can produce anywhere within this boundary or along the boundary. Then you have to analyze the situation that PPC may shift inward during the period of wars, because inward shift basically shows decrease in quantity and quality of resources, right? So decrease in quantity or quality of resources. So PPC shifts inward from AB to CD during the period of war because resources are depleted and they are destroyed during wars. So it is likely that PPC may shift inward during the period of wars. And another thing that you have to cover is you have to give the conclusion, final conclusion. You can say that in conclusion, PPC of a country during the period of war is more likely to shift inward if the country is directly involved in war. Definitely its resources will be depleted and destroyed, and definitely PPC is more likely to shift downward. But on the other side, you can also say that there may be some countries whose PPC may shift outward that are not directly involved in war, and these countries may be improving their quality and quantity of resources, or maybe discovering new natural resources as well. Right, so this will be the possible answer for question number A, and examiner may ask question like this as well. Explain the impact of decrease in unemployment or decrease in unused resources. This is the same thing, decrease in unemployment or decrease in unused resources. Or examiner may say increase in actual economic growth and potential economic growth on PPC diagram. So these are two parts. One is one part ends here and the other part is this one. Okay, so again you will have to define what PPC is, right, and how to show unemployment or unused resources on the PPC diagram. Unused resources or unemployment is shown with the point inside the PPC. Let's say this is initial PPC diagram OAB. Any point inside the PPC, that is point C, let's say, shows unemployment of resources, right? So it means production is taking place equal to this much x1 and y1 at point C when country is facing unemployment. So if unemployment or unused resources decrease, or there is increase in actual economic growth, then economy will move from point C to D towards right. So the new point will be point D, and production of X good will increase to X2, Y good will increase to Y2, for example. So it will lead to increase in production possibilities of the country, and it will result in actual economic growth, right? So actual economic growth is when there is increase in GDP of the country due to employment of previously unemployed resources. And PPC can be used to show the potential economic growth as well. For potential economic growth, you can say that it is achieved when there is increase in quantity or quality of resources, or both as well. So potential economic growth with PPC is shown by a rightward shift in the PPC diagram. For example, it was initially AB, now it may shift to CD, and again this is X good and on Y we have Y good. So you can show it like this. Okay, so in conclusion, you can say that there will be movement inside the curve towards the PPC diagram if there is actual economic growth or decrease in unemployment or decrease in unused resources. and PPC is likely to shift to the right completely if there is potential economic growth or increase in quantity and quality of resources. These are the normal circumstances. However, exceptions are always there. Sometimes, like decrease in unemployment may increase output like with greater proportion, and sometimes output may increase with lesser proportion. For example, from point C to D, GDP will increase and X and Y both are increasing. X goods are produced more, Y are also produced more. But if unemployment could have completely removed, then economy would have moved from point C to E directly, where production of X and Y both should have increased a lot, right? So this is how you can conclude your answer. And part B is assess two government policies to increase the provision of merit goods. Consider which one is the most effective, right? So first of all, you will define what merit goods are. So merit goods are the products that are generally produced to increase positive externalities in the economy, and these are beneficial to the consumers as well as the third party. You can give example of education, right? Education, then you can give example of healthcare, and then you can give example of plantation. So these are the most popular examples: education, healthcare, and plantation. These are the merit goods because they are not only beneficial to the consumers themselves but also to the entire society and third party. Third party is a person who is neither producer nor consumer. So this will be the basic knowledge, and you can identify the policies that government can use to increase provision of merit goods. So the two policies that you can identify at microeconomic level can be like the provision of subsidy. If government provides subsidy to the private sector, then merit goods are produced more, because subsidy is the financial support provided by the government to the private sector, so they produce more of merit goods and increase welfare in the society. And similarly, direct public provision DPPM, using short form, direct public provision, mean government itself produces merit goods and provides them to the general public. And government, since government is not a profit making organization, so it may produce merit goods at relatively low prices and in greater quantity for the welfare of the society. But on the other hand, to evaluate this situation, you can say that these policies might not always be effective, because subsidy provided by the government may be misused in the economy, and private sector may not use this subsidy fully for the production of merit goods that are beneficial to the society. Rather, they may misuse it for any other purpose apart from provision of merit goods, such as if you give subsidy to a certain company that is producing merit goods, but what that company does is that company gives more rewards, more benefits, fringe benefits to the managers of the company instead of using that money to produce merit goods, right? And it also increases inefficiency of the funds as well, because if they are provided with subsidy, then they don't care a lot about this, about becoming like efficient and producing more goods and services. And similarly, direct public provision is evaluated as, you can say that when government itself produces goods and services, mainly governments are like inefficient, and they have complex documentation and procedures, so it would be really difficult for the people to get merit goods from the government if these goods are directly provided by the government. Government also like compromises on quality. In most of the cases, government provided goods are relatively low quality products. So you can talk against these policies, and at the end you can give conclusion where you can mention whether these policies are always effective or not. So you can say that in conclusion, government policies are policies of subsidy and direct provision are the good ways to increase the provision of merit goods if they are properly supervised and effectively implemented by the government, and they increase the provision or production of merit goods, and they are easily available to the general public. And now moving to question number 4, For A, explain the impact of movement or transition of an economy from planned to a mixed economy. Consider the most significant benefits of these transition. Right, so transition is when we move from one system to another system. So planned economy is when resources are under the government, and we have another economy, that is free market economy, where resources are utilized by the private sector, and mixed economy is the mixture of planned and mixed economy. So here you have to explain, if economies move to the mixed economic system, then what kind of benefits it can obtain. Like there will be greater, you will have to explain first of all what planned economy is, what private economy or free market economy is, and what mixed economy is, what are their basic features, and what is the meaning of movement or transition from one system to another system. Right, so if we move from planned to mixed economy, that would be transition from planned to mixed economy. And now you can explain the advantages of mixed economy, saying that if economies become mixed economies, then they can reap many benefits, such as like there will be greater quantity of goods and services available to the consumers, and consumers will benefit lower prices as well, benefit from lower prices as well. Similarly, like private and public sector both are contributing, so employment opportunities will also increase, and wide range of goods will be also be available in the economy, and government interferes to control prices as well. If private sector is overcharging, then government may interfere and intervene, and it may reduce the price by setting maximum prices. But if producers are getting lesser prices due to any reason, then government may interfere and may set minimum price above the equilibrium to support producers. You can draw a diagram of minimum and maximum price as well. So this is demand and supply diagram, where price is market price is P and quantity is Q. Minimum price is set above the equilibrium like this, PM, minimum price. It causes surplus in the market, and then P max, that is price X, price max, for example maximum price, that will lead to shortage in the market as well. So maximum price is set to support the consumers by the government, and minimum price is set by the government to support producers in the economy, and it happens in case of agricultural goods mainly. And now you have to talk against the mixed economy. If economies move from planned to the mixed economic system, then there may be some problems as well. Like there may be like conflict of interest between public and private sector, that is government and private sector firms, because government may interfere by setting minimum and maximum prices. That creates conflict between private and public sector, because private sector wants to generate more and more revenue to increase their profit, to maximize their profit, but government wants to increase welfare of the society. So there is conflict of interest. Government is trying to increase welfare in the society, while private sector is trying to maximize the profit. So they may basically there may be a conflict of interest between them, and government may interfere, and government may affect decision making of the private sector in mixed economies. Government also charges higher taxes to the private sector, and again it irritates private sector investment. It reduces local as well as foreign direct investment into the country. And at the end you can you can say that mixed economies are the relatively better economies in the world, because it will improve job opportunities for the country, and unemployment may be reduced, and when there is reduced unemployment, it also controls crime rate in the country. An examiner may ask question like this as well: explain using example why merit goods are classified as private goods rather than public goods. Right, so you have to explain what merit goods are. Merit goods are the products that are beneficial to the consumers as well as to the third party or society overall, and examples can be like education, healthcare, and plantation. And then private goods are the products that are excludable and rival. Excludable are you will have to explain what are the meaning of excludability and rivalry. Excludability is when you can exclude someone from using the product, and rivalry is when the product is used by one person, then all others who were already using it, their benefits will decrease. And for example, in case of then are the public goods. You have to give knowledge of public goods as well. These are the products that are non-excludable and non-rival, means everyone is allowed to use them. And secondly, non-rival is when it is used by one person, then its benefits for others will not decrease or diminish. Examples of public goods can be like lighthouse, right? So lighthouse that is set up in seas to guide the ships. It will like guide every ship coming their way. So public goods are non-excludable and non-rival. Non-rival is when the product is used by one person, then benefits to all others who were already using it will not decrease or diminish. Okay, so now moving to why merit goods may be classified as private good and why they might be classified as public good, and then at the end you will have to finally conclude that merit goods are always private goods because they are excludable and rival. For example, if you are getting education in a university, then everyone is not allowed to enter the university. Education is a merit good, but everyone can't get admission in university. They have to fulfill certain criteria, right? So if they don't meet that criteria, then they can't enter the university. Similarly, universities also have like limited potential to give admission to the students. So again, it is excludable and rival. Assess whether the introduction of maximum price has greater benefits to the consumers if imposed on an essential food item. So you will have to explain what maximum price is and how maximum price benefits to the consumers if it is imposed on essential food item. You can make the diagram as well. For example, this is the diagram. This is normal demand curve, this is normal supply curve. Equilibrium takes place at E, where equilibrium quantity of basic food items is Q and price is P. And if government sets maximum price for food, then that will look like this. So this is price max, P max, and it has resulted in shortage equal to this much area. So this is the new quantity demand and this is new quantity supplied. So the gap between QD and QS is the area of shortage. So this is the area of shortage. Okay, so now you can say that maximum price can be beneficial to the consumers because they have to pay less price Px, that is lower than the equilibrium market price. For example, if government imposes maximum price on agricultural good like wheat, for example, then the consumers of wheat will benefit in the form of lower prices of the wheat, and they can like enjoy greater quantity. However, on the other hand, you can say that setting maximum price causes shortage if it is effective and set below the equilibrium, and you can identify this shortage as well. This is the shortage, area of shortage from QS to QD, and it leads to black marketing as well. Like black marketing is when unofficially sellers will charge high prices than the price set by the government below equilibrium, right? So maximum price also leads to long queues where people will have to stand in long queues and lines, and they will have to wait for getting the product because there will be shortage of goods in the market. Sometimes government has to take police actions as well to release the stock in the market in sufficient quantity and increase the provision of good and service. However, in many cases consumers suffer a lot because they are unable to get the product at price set by the government. And at the end, you have to first explain what are the advantages of maximum price and then what are the disadvantages of maximum price. And then you have to give the conclusion, final conclusion, where you can say that instead of said in conclusion, maximum price seems to be a good and beneficial way of increasing provision of goods such as essential food item to the consumers. However, in many cases it causes further trouble for the consumers because they are unable to find the product in the market because of shortage. And you can suggest that instead of like setting maximum price, it would be better if government provides subsidy to the essential food item producers so that they produce more and they avoid creating shortage in the market. And another important thing that can be tested from the microeconomics is like the interpretation of these values that are shown here, that is PED, XED, YD. For example, price elasticity of demand minus 1.5, minus 0.50. What these values basically show, one minus price, keep in mind price elasticity of demand is always negative because it shows negative relationship between price and quantity. If price goes up, quantity demand goes down. So this is negative relationship, and because of that negative relationship, PED is always negative. Okay, so 1.5 PED 1.5 is elastic. Elastic demand means a little change in price will lead to greater change in quantity demand. For example, if we increase price a little bit, then demand should decrease a lot. And 0.5, which is less than 1, we consider the value instead of the sign. Sign is just to identify the negative relationship, while the value is representing whether the demand is elastic or inelastic. So 1.5 is greater than 1, so it is elastic, means small change in price leads to greater change in demand, and 0.5 is less than 1 and it shows that greater change in price will lead to smaller change in quantity demand. And when it is 0, it means that change in price does not affect demand. And YED plus 1.2 plus sign shows that the good is a normal or luxury product. It means if income increases, demand will rise, right? Positive income elasticity of demand means when income increases, we use Y for income, and this is the standard like variable or abbreviation used for income. Y is basically for yield, and yield means like income or output that produced generally. So we use Y for income. So income elasticity of demand plus 1.2 shows that if income goes up, quantity demand will also go up because relationship is positive. This positive sign shows direct or positive relationship, and it happens in case of normal goods and luxury products that have elastic demand. 1.2 is elastic, means a little increase in income will lead to greater increase in quantity demand. When it is plus 0.5, it means the product has direct relationship with the income, mean income increases, demand will rise, but with less proportion. And minus 1.5 mean income elasticity of demand is negative, means if income goes up, demand will go down, and it happens in case of inferior goods. So one value 1.5 shows that demand is elastic, means if income increases a little bit, demand will decrease a lot. And 0.5 minus 0.5 mean it is inferior good, but the demand is relatively inelastic, means greater change in income will lead to a lesser change in quantity demand. Greater rise in income will lead to lesser decrease in quantity demand. And XED can be like plus 1.5 plus 1. XED is cross elasticity of demand. If cross elasticity of demand is 1.5, it shows these goods are substitutes, and substitutes are the products that can replace each other, that are alternative to each other, such as Coke and Pepsi. And if there is fall in price of Coke, then demand for Pepsi will rise. So this is inverse relationship. Demand for Pepsi will fall because if Coke is cheaper, then demand for Pepsi will fall because more people will purchase more Coke. And 1.5 shows that plus sign shows that products are substitute, and 1.5 shows that demand is elastic, means a little fall in price of Coke will lead to a greater fall in demand for Pepsi. Minus 1.5 means minus sign or negative sign shows that products are complements. Complements are the products that complete each other, such as car and petrol. And 1.5 value 1.5 shows that the demand is elastic, means a little fall in price of cars will lead to a greater rise in demand for petrol. So that is elastic demand. When cross elasticity of demand is 0, it means they are unrelated goods. Unrelated goods mean they don't have any kind of connection between each other. For example, if there is fall in price of Coke, then what will happen to the demand for mobile phones? Okay? There will be no change in or impact in in the demand for mobile phone, because Coke and mobile phones don't have any kind of connection with each other. So cross elasticity of demand will be 0. Now moving to the macroeconomics part. First of all, question number 1A, explain the causes of inflation, demand pull and cost push inflation, and consider which one is more likely to be caused during wars. Okay, so examiner may mention any of the factors like that may affect demand or cost push inflation. I'm mentioning wars here because this is the current scenario. Wars are happening everywhere these days. In many countries are facing wars these days. Okay, so examiner may mention this word, but it is not necessary that he will mention this word, but any of the factors that can cause demand pull or cost push inflation. Okay, to answer this question, first of all, you have to cater assessment objective 1, that is knowledge, and then assessment objective 2, that is analysis, then assessment objective 3, that is evaluation. You have 3 marks for knowledge, 3 for analysis, 2 for evaluation, right? So what is knowledge here? First of all, this topic, this basically question is from the topic inflation. So you will have to define first inflation. What inflation is? Inflation is the persistent rise in general price level over time, and it may be like caused by a demand pull, increasing demand, aggregate demand, or decreasing aggregate supply in the country. Demand pull inflation is caused by increase in aggregate demand, and aggregate demand is basically C plus I plus G plus X minus M. These are also known as components of aggregate demand. Sometimes examiner asks question about components of aggregate demand. It means you have to explain consumption, investment, government expenditure, and exports minus imports. So demand pull inflation is caused when there is increase in aggregate demand in the economy, and cost push inflation is caused when there is fall in aggregate supply or increase in cost of production in the economy. This will be the knowledge part, and next you have to move to the analysis part. In analysis part, you have to make the diagram of demand pull inflation. For example, this is aggregate demand. On X we have real GDP. Keep in mind we have to write real GDP on X instead of quantity. Now it's macroeconomic issue. And on Y we have to write down price level. Instead of price we have to write price level. And this is aggregate supply. Aggregate demand and supply meet each other at point E, where real GDP is Y and price level is P. Now if there is rise in aggregate demand, then aggregate demand curve will shift to the right from AD to AD1. Equilibrium will move from E to E1, where GDP will rise from Y to Y1 and price level will rise from P to P1, right? So this is P1. So rise in price from P to P1 is demand pull inflation. And next is cost push inflation. Cost push inflation is caused when there is fall in aggregate supply in the economy, and you can make the diagram like this. Okay, so this is price level, and this is aggregate demand AD, and this is aggregate supply AS. AD and AS meet each other at E, where real GDP is Y and price level is P. Due to decrease in aggregate supply curve will shift to the left from AS to AS1. Equilibrium will move to E1, GDP will fall to Y1, price level will increase to P1. Now price has increased because of lower aggregate supply or higher cost of production, and this is cost push inflation. And now you have to finally evaluate which type of inflation may be caused during wars. During wars, there are more chances of depletion of natural resources as well as man-made resources. So production may be interrupted and factories may stop working, and production may decrease and aggregate supply will fall, and it is more likely that cost push inflation may occur in the country, right? So if the country is directly affected by war, then cost push inflation is more likely, but if the country is not affected by a war directly, then demand pull inflation in that country may also occur, because the countries that are producing war weapons, aggregate demand in those countries may rise because they will be able to sell more weapons or deterrents, war deterrents in the world. So their aggregate demand may rise. So it depends if the country is directly or affected by the war or not. And part B is assess whether internal consequences of inflation are more harmful than its external consequences. You have to define inflation if this is totally the new topic, new question. If there is continuation of the question from part A, then you need not to define inflation because you have already done it in part A. Internal consequences of inflation means consequences of inflation within the national boundaries of a country, and external consequences mean consequences of inflation beyond the boundaries of a country. So, internal consequences include fall in purchasing power of the consumers. Where inflation occurs, people are unable to purchase even basic necessities in many cases. If we are talking about poor class, and poor class have mainly spending on basic necessities such as food, shelter and clothing, so they are affected a lot because they can't afford basic necessities now. Similarly, there will be fall in investment because investors are also the consumer of goods and services, capital goods and services such as machinery, technology, tools, raw material, and definitely inflation affect them as well because of inflation there will be high prices of technology, machinery and tools. So as a result, they will also be affected. They won't be able to invest in the country, and it may also lead to like fiscal drag. Fiscal drag is when people are dragged into high tax bracket, because when there is inflation, workers generally demand high wages, and when they demand high wages, consumers when workers demand high wages, and if they get them successfully, mean their salaries and wages are successfully raised or increased, then they will be automatically they will shift to the higher tax brackets as per the progressive tax system. Now they will have to pay more taxes as well. So because of inflation, one problem was their purchasing power was low, but at the same time now they have to pay more taxes as well because of being in higher tax brackets. And shoe leather cost is another disadvantage that is faced by the consumers at internal level or within the country. And shoe leather cost is when you have to keep moving for searching the cheaper versions of the product. Because of inflation, you can't purchase the existing ones, and you are now trying to find out cheaper versions, and you are moving from one market to another, from one shop to another shop. It wastes your time, it like wastes the fuel if you are traveling through your vehicles, or it may erode your shoes as well if you are walking by foot. And external consequences of inflation are inflation beyond the boundaries of a country, such as like fall in exports. Because of inflation, your exports are expensive, and the other countries will be basically reluctant to purchase from you, so exports may fall. And imports may rise because if local goods are expensive, people will prefer importing goods from other countries. And it also like deteriorates balance of payment position and exchange rate of the country as well. And in conclusion, you can say that internal consequences may be more harmful than the external consequences if the country is not involved in international trade a lot, right? So there are so many countries that don't internationally trade with other countries, or they trade with other countries in limited amount, right? So they will not be affected a lot. But on the other hand, if the country is heavily involved in international trade, then it will be affected a lot because of inflation. So its external consequences will be more harmful than the internal consequences. Also, like the consequences of inflation depend upon whether it is caused by demand pull inflation or cost push inflation, whether the rate of inflation is creeping or hyper, and what is the inflation rate in the trading partner country as well, right? Demand pull inflation is good inflation because it increases economic activity, employment and growth in the country, while cost push inflation is bad inflation and harmful as well, right? So this is how you can like explain them. Okay, so these are the questions that may be tested in the exam. And I suggest all of you to read all other questions as well and try to make possible marking schemes and jot down the points as well, so that you can do well in the upcoming exam today, inshallah. And I wish all of you best of luck as well. And I'm going to explain one more question, that is question number 4a. Explain the meaning of actual and potential economic growth with relevant graphs, and consider which one is likely to be achieved during improvement in technology, due to the improvement in technology, right? So you have to define the main term economic growth first. It is the rise in real GDP per capita over time, and actual growth is achieved due to the employment of previously unemployed resources, such as like when you are operating inside the PPC and you move towards the PPC. Potential growth is achieved due to the increase in quantity and quality of resources, and you can make the diagrams as well. I have explained the diagram in the first question in micro, and I have related that to the actual and potential growth already. So in case of actual growth, what happens is we move from inside the PPC, let's say this is point A to point B towards the PPC, or we may move to the point C as well. So movement from A to B or C is actual economic growth. And potential economic growth is when PPC completely shifts to the right, and it happens due to improvement in technology or increase in quantity and quality of resources, such as discovery of new natural resources, improvement in technology, education and training of workers as well. So this is how you can show it. And in conclusion, you can say that improvement in technology is likely to shift PPC to the right, and it will help to achieve potential economic growth. Part B is assess whether supply side policies, fiscal monetary policies are always effective to achieve economic growth, control inflation, unemployment, or correct balance of payment deficit. So examiner may mention any one policy. Maybe he may ask question about supply side policy, and he may focus on economic growth or inflation or unemployment or balance of payment deficit. So examiner will not mention all of these objectives or these policies, rather he will focus more on one policy and one objective only. First of all, let's say I say that examiner is asking about supply side policy and his focus is economic growth, right? So supply side policy, first of all you will have to define what supply side policies are. These are the policies that are used to achieve macroeconomic objectives by manipulating or affecting or influencing aggregate supply in the country, and its tools include like subsidy, education and training of workers, capital expenditure of the government on long-term projects, and similarly like deregulation of monopoly and privatization as well. So there are so many factors, but components, but you need not to explain all of them. You can explain any 3 of them, and you can say that if government wants to achieve economic growth in the long run, then government can provide subsidy to the private sector, and subsidy will increase aggregate supply in the country because investors will be comfortable investing more money in the business, and as a result overall GDP of the country may rise, and and economic growth in the country may increase. Secondly, the provision of education and training of workers is also a supply side policy, and when workers are educated well, their productivity and efficiency will rise, and when they are more efficient they will produce more at relatively in lesser time. So as a result GDP may rise and economic growth may be achieved. And similarly, capital expenditure on long term projects, like government may set up new investments and new projects, and may initiate long term projects such as construction of national highways, construction of hospitals, schools, colleges, universities. This will create more job opportunities initially for construction workers and subsequently for the permanent workers. For example, if government is constructing hospital, then many doctors and paramedical staff will get jobs there, and GDP of the country may rise and income level of the country may rise. And on the other hand, you will have to talk against supply side policy as well. For example, you can say that subsidy provided by the government may be wasted by the private sector and or may be misused or may be inefficiently used. That may not cause economic growth in the country. And similarly, you can say that education and training provided by the government to the individuals may not improve their productivity if the workers are reluctant to learn new skills about the new technology, machinery, and tools. So their productivity may not rise because, like in many cases, we can see that there are organizations, government organizations, that are conducting training workshops for the workers on regular basis, but workers don't learn new stuff. They waste everything invested by the government. Similarly, long-term expenditure done by the government may be like for the political gain instead of achieving economic growth. In many developing countries, especially, politicians are more uh, like more concerned about their political gain instead of like improving the quality of the nation or improving economic growth in the country. Right, so they invest resources, invest funds in those projects that can help them get more political gain instead of achieving economic growth. So you can talk against this policy as well. And at the end, you can conclude that supply side policy is not the only way to achieve economic growth. And this is a long-term policy. It takes a lot of time to bring an impact on an economy, and yeah, this can be the reason for that. So government should use fiscal and monetary policies that may be like more beneficial, and they may bring quick impact on an economy. And if the examiner asks about, keep in mind the important thing that you can't mix up the tools of fiscal policy, supply side policy, and monetary policy. Tools of supply side policy are subsidy, deregulation of monopoly, trade union reforms, capital expenditure of government on long-term projects, and privatization. These are the tools of supply side policy, and you have to write these tools when you are talking about supply side policies. Fiscal policy is the demand side policy that manipulates direct taxes and government expenditure to achieve objectives, and monetary policy is made by central bank of the country like State Bank of Pakistan, that manipulates money supply, interest rate, and credit regulation. So these are the tools of fiscal, monetary, and supply side policy, and you can't mix them up, right? What generally students do is they are explaining fiscal policy and they are talking about interest rate, money supply, and credit regulations. Examiner straight away gives 0 marks for such questions, right? So keep in mind, you can't mix these instruments, otherwise you will lose marks. Rather, you will lose everything. Okay, beta. So these are some questions, and you can look into other questions as well that are given in this guest paper. And now talking about the case studies, I have solved some case studies. You can go to the playlist of this channel and find out the playlist paper 2 AS economics, and you can find there are so many case studies that I have solved there, so you can get idea from them as well, and that will also help you out, inshallah. And what can be like the important things that you must know for the case study? Generally, the first question is like identifying the reason, some reason or relationship, or you have to interpret some value given in the table, in the diagram, in case study. For example, if basically examiner has given the figures related to government budget, and government budget is, let's say, minus 5 billion, or it may be like plus 10 billion, for example, what does they represent, right? Or for example, minus 5 billion was in year 1 and 10 billion is plus 10 billion is in year 2. So examiner may ask what has happened to the budget, government budget. So you can say that government budget has moved from deficit to surplus, because when budget is negative, it means it is deficit, and when it is positive, it means it is in surplus. And examiner also asks about a question about balance of payment, current account position. If balance of payment is negative, let's say minus 1 minus 10 million $10 million, and it moves from minus $10 million to $20 million, minus $20 million. It means कि balance of payment current account was deficit in year 1, and it remained in deficit, and deficit has further increased instead of decreasing. So if balance of payment is negative, it means it is deficit. If it is positive, it means it is surplus. And inflation values he may ask you to interpret inflation values. Rate of inflation may be like sometimes decreasing, and students think that price level is decreasing, but inflation rate, if rate of inflation was initially, let's say, 5%, and now it decreased to 3%, students think that prices have decreased. So keep in mind, prices haven't decreased, rather prices have increased, but with lesser proportion. Initially it rose by 5%, now it has increased by 3%. However, if inflation rate moves to negative, let's say minus 3%, then it is fallen price level, or it is also called deflation. We have like Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient is the measure of Gini coefficient. Coefficient is the measure of measure of like disparities or inequalities inequalities in the country. If there is greater Gini coefficient, then it means there are more inequalities. If there is smaller Gini coefficient, it means there are less disparities or less inequalities in the country. And another important thing is nominal and real value, nominal and real GDP, or nominal and real wages. Examiner uses these terms. So nominal wages are, or nominal income, or nominal, anything that is nominal means it is expressed in monetary terms and it is calculated at current prices, while real things or real GDP, real wages or real income, anything examiner may use, and you can say that real wages or real income is the income after the removal of distorting effect of inflation, and real values or real wages, real GDP is calculated at base prices instead of current prices. And examiner may ask to find out the trend in the diagram. Trends, like how to like find out the trend. Okay, so we have like time period on X and GDP on Y, and GDP is moving like this, right? So from like 2000 to 2005, this was the overall trend of the GDP. Examiner may ask the question whether GDP, what is the overall trend of the GDP between 2000 and 2005. So what should be the answer or trend for this question? So it is really simple to find out the trend. You can take the starting value and the ending value, and then you can connect them. If the graph is going upward, it means trend is positive, right? If this graph had ended at this point, for example, this was the ending point of the graph, then this will be the trend, that is decreasing trend, right? So keep in mind, trend is calculated by joining with a straight line starting point and ending point of the graph. And another thing that examiner may ask you in section A can be like kind of like the impact of supply side policies on different economic tools, fiscal policy and monetary policy. And examiner may ask you to assess whether the increase in demand has always positive impact on an economy. Like he may ask you to make the equilibrium graph and show how the change in price of one good affects the demand for another, if the other good is substitute or complement, right? So generally what questions are asked in case study from unit 1, they include the basic definition of PPC. Examiner may ask you to draw the PPC diagram and show unemployment in the country. So when he asks to draw the PPC and show unemployment, then it means you have to show point inside the curve, right? If he asks to show with the PPC the growth in the economy, then you can show a rightward shift in the PPC diagram, right? Or you may show point from inside the PPC towards PPC as well. So this is actual growth and this is potential growth. So if examiner mentions potential growth, then you can make this diagram. If he mentions actual growth, then you can make this diagram. But if he doesn't mention anything, then you can preferably make second graph, this one. An examiner may ask you to identify the features of public good and why one good may be public or why may be private good, and this is also from unit number 1. And from unit 1, another important thing that examiner asks is about free market plan and mixed economies, right? From unit 2, examiner may ask you to make the equilibrium diagram, demand and supply diagram, to show the impact of change in any component or any factor that may affect demand or supply and shift demand and supply curves. So you have to make the diagram accordingly. For example, if the price of one good is increasing, what will happen to the demand or market of another good if the other good is a substitute product? Okay, so then we have like another thing from unit number 2, that is like price elasticity values may be given and you have to interpret those values, and there may be any kind of cross elasticity, income elasticity of demand values, or price elasticity of supply values, and you may have to interpret those values, and I have explained those values in detail in the previous slide. These were the values that are given here, and you can like move back to this video and watch the interpretation of these values, and these may be tested in case studies as well. And examiner may also ask you from unit number 2 about the consumer surplus and producer surplus, and how consumer and producer surplus may be affected. And from unit number 3, examiner may ask you about how incident of indirect tax may fall on consumers and producers. You can use the concept of price elasticity of demand to explain that if government imposes indirect tax, more tax burden falls on consumer when demand is inelastic, and less on consumer when demand is more elastic, right? So examiner may ask you about the incidence of tax as well from unit number 3. And unit number 3, you have minimum maximum prices, and you have transfer payments, direct public provision. These are the like important stuff that may be tested from unit number 3. Inequalities of income, how to remove inequalities, reduce inequalities in the country. What are the effectiveness of policies, government policies to reduce inequalities? These are the questions that may be tested from unit number 3. And from unit number 4, inflation, unemployment, growth, equilibrium national income, these are the concepts that are basically involved in unit number 4. And you may be tested about the consequences of inflation, or you may have to find out the trends in inflation rate. If inflation rate is positive, it means prices are increasing. If inflation rate is negative, it means prices are decreasing. If inflation rate is 0, it means prices are stable. And economic growth, for economic growth, actual potential growth, possible advantages of economic growth. If economic growth occurs in the country, employment opportunities will rise, economic employment will increase, GDP will rise, standard of living of the country may also improve. He may ask about sustainability. Sustainability is when you achieve economic growth and improve quality of life of the current generation, but not at the cost of future generation, right? That is called sustainable economic growth or sustainable economic development. And also examiner may ask you to explain frictional, structural, cyclical unemployment, and which one of them is more harmful. You must know them as well. Frictional unemployment is unemployment of a worker between two jobs. Structural unemployment is because of changes in technology, law and order, relocation of industry. And cyclical unemployment is caused by fall in aggregate demand in the country or economic recession in the country, right? So which one is more harmful? Definitely structural unemployment is the most harmful, because your skill set does not remain saleable when there is structural unemployment, right? You have to get further education and training to get employed again. And cyclical unemployment is the unemployment that affects the entire country, and it may be harmful, but it is generally said that cyclical unemployment comes and goes with the economic cycle. So it, in this case, your skill remains saleable. You can sell your skills, but you don't have job, and as soon as the economy revives, you get jobs easily. From international trade, like you may be asked question about comparative advantage when one country can produce at relatively lower opportunity cost as compared to the other country, and you may be asked about absolute advantage, protectionism, terms of trade, and exchange rate, free floating exchange rate system as well, and the impact of depreciation of currency on national output and inflation rate as well. So whenever there is depreciation of currency, it increases price of imports, decreases price of export. So it increases real GDP of the country and aggregate demand in the economy, but it also decreases increases price level and increases real GDP if there is depreciation. But in case of appreciation of currency, aggregate demand falls, and real GDP and price level also decreases. However, these impacts depend upon price elasticity of demand. If price elasticity of demand is elastic, then depreciation will be beneficial, but if it is inelastic, then depreciation will be harmful. And for appreciation of currency, if the price elasticity of demand is inelastic, then it will be beneficial in the short run, but in the long run it will be harmful to the economy, because appreciation increases price of exports, and when demand is elastic, it means a lot of demand will fall for exports, and you may face fall in aggregate demand and deficit in balance of payment as well. Okay, so I would sum up this video here, and I believe this will help you a lot, inshallah, and you can keep watching this video when you're going to the exam or you have some time before the exam. And I wish best of luck for all of you, and after the exam I'm also expecting you to give your feedback. You may write me questions that were tested in the exam on +92 333 4429 This is my WhatsApp number. You can share your feelings after the exam, and you may share the question that were tested in the exam as well. So see you in the next video soon, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.